Hi and welcome to another video for year 7 maths. Now the chapter that we are going to do is about algebra, and the first topic that you have to do is how to formulate algebra expression. So basically you have to remember three things, which is what we call terms, and then we also have constants, we also have variables. And within the product of both constants variable, we also have the term coefficient. Okay, so later you will know what that means. Okay, let's start with this one. Here this is the idea of algebra. Consider that we have a basket of apples and we don't know the amount of apples, but let's consider that we are adding 3 more apples into the basket. So how many apples are there? So when you try to represent this, we will represent this using the unknown quantity, or we call it variable. So here, let's say this basket of apples, there are x number of apples in the basket. And when you add a 3, so you have x plus 3. Now, x plus 3 here, we call it an algebraic expression. And then within that algebraic expression, we have 2 terms, which is x and 3. And here, we have an algebraic expression, which is also called as mathematical phrase. And we have the terms inside the algebraic expression, and in between there will be operation. And then in a term, you can have constant, you can have a variable, or the product of a number and variable. Now let's see here, what do you mean by constant here? Constant is basically just a number. Let's say here in a 2 plus x minus 4y, the 2 is a constant. And then let's look at the plus x. Plus x here is actually a product of a number and variable. The number here in front of x is actually 1. But you don't have to write 1 in front of x because x is already 1x. So in that term, we have the coefficient. The coefficient is basically just the number placed in front of the variable. So here, in front of the variable x, we have a coefficient. We have a coefficient of 1. Okay, so that's one example. And then the next one, the third term here, we have negative 4y. So you can see here in front of the variable, you have a coefficient of negative 4. So here, coefficient, when you try to say a coefficient, you have to also include the sign, whether it's positive or whether it's negative. All right, now when you try to write algebra expression, we try to write it as simply as possible. So the first one here, when you try to write product, okay, when you try to write product, okay, for example, 1 times a here, 2 times a times b, and a times a. So when you try to write product, we can leave out the time sign. So here, for example, 1 times a is 1a. So 1a, you know it already. You have an a. So you leave at 1. Okay. So in front of a, it's already 1. Okay. Now let's next one is 2 times a. It's actually 2a. You have to write the numbers before the variables. Okay. Now, when you have a combination of 2 variables, when you multiply them together, a times b, it will become ab, alphabetical order. Now, for your information, you can also write this as ba. Okay, it's the same thing. Because here, let's a and b are variables, and the variables represent numbers. So let's say 2 times 3 is 6. So when you say that 3 times 2, it also equals 6. And then the last one here, when you try to do product between 2 same variable, a times a, it means aa. So aa means a square. For example, a, let's say a is 3, 3 times 3 is 9. And 9 is also represented by 3 square, right? So that's for the product. Okay, let's do the second one, which is when you try to write division. When you try to write division, generally you have to use a fraction form. So here, let's say you have a divided by 2. So it is equal to a over 2, or you can write it as half times a, half a. And then 2 divided by a, 2 will be on the numerator, and a divided, it's going to be in the denominator. And when you have 2 variables, a divided by b, so it is a out of b, right? So moving on to the next page. Okay, here, when you try to formulate, Mathematical statements can be translated into algebraic expression. For example, when you see this, add 4 to A. So basically here, when you have A and you add it by 4. So basically that's your algebraic expression for this statement. Okay, the second one, subtract H from 5. So here you are wondering, where do we begin? Are we beginning from H or are we beginning from 5? So here, since from 5, it's like from me to you. So the first thing that you have to write down is 5. So 5 minus H, okay? And then the next one, multiply 2 by P. So 2 multiply P means 2 times P. So you can write it down as 2P, okay? And then divide 9 by 2E. 9 divided by 2E. So here, you can write it down as a fraction, 9 over 2E, okay? Next one is product of 4 and A. Product means multiply, so 4 product of 4 and A means 4A, right? And then subtract 3 from the product of 4 and A. You have to start from this one first, right? So here, this is your number 1. So next one will be subtract by 3, okay? So 4A, and then you subtract 3 from the product. So this is the algebra expression for this statement. And lastly, add x to the product of 3 and y. 3 and y, when you do a product of them, it will become 3y, and then you add x. Okay, so basically that's one amongst the possible mathematical statement, right? So next one here, in the case of mathematical word problems, we needed to formulate algebraic expression based on the given information. So let's start with example 1. Here, Dewi is 5 years older. So here means you have to translate this as plus 5, right? And then her brother. Her brother is M years old. What is Dewi's age? Now you know that her brother is M years old. M, it could be any number. But here, since we're dealing with algebra, you can use any alphabet that you want. So here, when her brother is M, Dewi should be 5 years older, right? So basically the answer will be, Dewi's age will be M plus 5 years old. So here you can leave it as this one, or you can add M plus 5 years old, right? So that's for example number 1. Next one, example number 2. Ali is X centimeter tall, and Islani's height is 20 centimeter less than twice of Ali's height. How tall is Islani? So Islani here, you know that he is 20 centimeter less than twice of Ali's height. So we have to know this one first. Because less than means minus 20, right? So 20 centimeter less than, and then twice of Ali's height. Ali's height is X. So twice of Ali's height means 2 times Ali's height. So here, Ali's height will be X, but here we want to know Islani. So Islani will be twice of Ali's height, and then you have to subtract 20. This is basically, you can get brackets. Okay, this is Islani's height. Okay, so that's the second example. And last one, what is the cost of 1 mango if the total cost of P mangoes is $B? So here, we will use the idea of ratio. So here, say that P is a number. Okay, let's say I will use, for both of these, I will use a number. So let's say 2 mangoes cost $4. And when you want to find 1, it's obvious that here you have to divide 4 by 2, right? So here basically you have to divide by 2. Okay, the same idea happens here. This is P mangoes. P, it could be any number, but we don't know because this is algebra. So P, you have to find 1, right? So you have to divide by P. So you will have to divide P, $B divided by P. So there's your answer. 1 mango will cost B over P $. Right? So I think that's it for the topic algebra expression. Hope you guys can understand the topic very well. Thank you very much and see you again.